parking space. We will need to have at least one parking space to be ADA compliant. So that will require some reconfiguration of the parking lot, the landscaping as well as the accessibility into the building. From Bruin Road, this is a little bit of a ramp here to the front door. So it is accessible from the front, but not the rear. So that will be need to be corrected. And I've identified this area here. It's not a parking space, but it's kind of a keyhole for cars, vehicles to back into. And this may need to be posted with a sign or something to that effect that it is not a parking space. So that may need to be reconfigured as well. Here are some different perspectives on the buildings that are proposed. This is the front facing Bruin Road, and this would be the side, the double porch facing Wild Spartina. As I indicated here, this is this would be the rear of the building. So this area here will need to be addressed for ADA accessibility. And I'm going to go through the various views, and I'll be glad to stop if you have any questions. So this is the Bruin Road view, the main entrance into the commercial area. And it'll be partially a production facility located in the back. From the door back will be a production facility for Palmetto Pops. And then the front will be a pickup area, or I'm assuming a retail area. This is not to be a sit-down type of a restaurant. It's simply just to pick up and take away. The reason I have the various areas highlighted, the HARB for Tabby Roads would like the door to be changed into a window, and while we don't follow their particular regulations, if this should be changed, then this door should reflect the windows that are found on the first floor. And then the two windows in back are intended to be, they need to be translucent because they are on a street side, and these are not proposed to be. So that will be one of the conditions that we've identified that should change. This is the Blue Crab view to the south, the carriage house with the garage on the ground floor. The interior side that would be facing the existing residence to the east. These are the various sections. The first floor plan. Service yards would be on the eastern side, adjacent to the residence. Second floor plan will have a connector, an interior connector, that will allow access into the carriage house residence. But this residence is also accessible from the exterior as well. Second half-story plan, the roof plan, the landscape plan, which, the tree permit will be required with the final plan and the various details. So we do have 8 findings. Number 1 being the ADA compliance, again, is going to be required, so there will need to be revisions made to the plan. Per the application's manual, a tree removal permit is required. And 3, 75% tree canopy coverage is also required, and I'm pretty certain that they'll have that based on that preliminary landscape plan that was shown. There was some incorrect square footages, inconsistent square footages shown on the plan, so that will need to be updated. Finding 5, the windows facing the street must be transparent, which would not allow the translucent and one-way film to block visibility. So staff is recommending that correction as well. If the door has to be removed on the Wild Spartina elevation, we are suggesting that it be replaced with a window that reflects the other windows on the same elevation. We would like to see window and door tables as well. And then if there is future signage, that would need to be provided through a separate site feature permit. And this is the review criteria. There are 4 review criteria. This is consistent with the Old Town Master Plan as well as the town's comprehensive plan. It also conforms, has a compatible visual relationship with other buildings around it. Number 2, I've gone through those things that didn't comply with Article 5, the design standards. and have outlined those. And again, for applications manual, the tree permit will be required. So with the findings that staff identified, we believe that this will comply with the requirements of the UDO. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions?
I do. The pickup area, does that require 2 exits? And if so, can they change the kitchen door into a window?
So they will need to have, well, they need 3 off-street spaces for the residential portion, the main residence and the accessory dwelling unit. So this will be able to back out. They've got room to be able to pull in and to back out, and that's why that keyhole there is going to be needed.
I'm talking about the main building.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So the pickup area,
Is up there, and the one door they're proposing to make a window, does that pickup area, being as that's where everyone's going to be, like the community of, patrons will come in, is that required to have 2 exits?
that may be a building code requirement, and I'm not 100% certain about that.
And if
I would have to check.
I think they'll be able to enlighten us, but if your occupancy is less than 50 in a space, you don't need 2 exits, so it should be fine with one.
It's also 50 on anyone.
Okay.
Any other questions? We'll start. We can just start down and.
Charlotte, what has the discussion been around it's takeout only and not dining, but there's a kind of a porch on the side that could easily be a dining porch. What is?
They would not be able to put out seats. That would change the use of the business. And we have talked about that internally, staff. I wanted to be certain. There are iceries that are permitted in town, but that's accessory to a retail use. And that's not the same situation as this. So it would have to be a to-go, pick up and leave. And I'm not 100% certain if this is intended for, for the public to come in and buy pops individually, or if this is intended to be pick up to take to other locations for sale. And perhaps the applicant can explain that.
Do we know how far, I know the service area faces a single-family home, right? Do we know what the distance is from that? Because there's, there's 3 large air conditioners. I'm sorry, 2 air conditioners. Something I saw, I remember seeing 3. But I'm just concerned about the noise level, the machinery for a home that's right next to it. Do we know what the distance is from that? It looked really close.
I thought I had that.
And do we know if there's been any consideration given to the occupants?
I will tell you that the HARB has identified the noise issues in their letter, and I believe you have that in your packet. So the noise issue is not something that we would address through this process, but I can tell you that the HARB is on that. The distance between the service yards and the adjacent yards, it looks to be less than 8 feet. And you can see this down here, between this point and this property line, 7 feet, 6 inches. And the service yards, you can see here, do get into that area. It is out of the required building setback. So I would say approximately, it looks to be the closest point, about 6 feet.
Is that the required setback between 2 residences or between a commercial building and a residence?
So if I understand your question correctly, the setback is just the building setback. There is no distance requirement between the buildings.
It doesn't matter what kind of building it is, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Questions?
And you were a little, you said you weren't sure about the landscaping plans providing, is it the 75% amount of shade?
They will need to demonstrate that through the tree permit process, or through the tree removal permit process. They will have to provide that. They didn't provide the percentage with this particular landscape plan, but I'm pretty certain, given the trees that are proposed at maturity, we'll be able to shade the property. And that shading of the property, that 75% canopy coverage is at maturity and does not include the rooftops.
Doesn't look like 75% to me, but what do I know about maturity of trees?
And if it isn't, we'll be certain that it does before the COFA is approved.
Any other questions? Questions for the applicant? Would the applicant like to speak?
I would like to. Good evening, James Atkins with Port Atkins Group. Just want to walk through a couple things. This is a mixed-use, commercial and residential. It is an owner-occupied building, so this is their business. They're living upstairs, and grandma's living over the garage. So that's why there's that little connector there. There are 2 HVAC units. They're both residential. I think you would probably go through every house and most houses throughout Tabby Roads, and most of them have 2 standard residential HVAC units. So we're not doing anything that is out of the ordinary. The door is not required by code. We are still working with Tabby Roads. The owner would like the door. Their feedback to us is, well, it looks like an apartment building in the letter. I would disagree with that. And if you just go down 3 doors to the home that's under construction, there are 4 exterior doors along the corner there. So I have to meet with the Tabby Roads Review Board and discuss that. But we're not going to fall on the sword for it, but we would like to at least make our argument for the door. But if it can't be a door, then it will be a window to match the other windows. And it's not required by code. We had noted aftermarket film on the windows. We'll take the note off, and they'll use some sort of shade or something behind there to block the window. No big deal there. I would like to know more about the source for the ADA space, because we did our own research with ANSI and ADA, and there is no specified distance to an ADA space, and there is an ADA space along the road that is on the accessible public way, and you're only required to have 1 accessible public way access for the public, which is only to the front door. The public is not allowed in the apartment or the production space that the owner runs their business out of. So, I could go town ordinances that specify any sort of required on-site ADA access only in the building code, IBC accessible code, and the ADA says that you have to have an accessible space that is tied to the accessible way. And there's no specified distance in our ordinances. Delaware, some others have specific ordinances of 100 feet, 200 feet, but in Bluffton, Beaufort County, South Carolina, there's no specified distance. So our proposal is that the front door is tied to the public walkway, which is the public accessible way, which is tied to the public accessible way to the parking space that's on the street. So, yes, ma'am.
So if somebody in a wheelchair parks in the handicap space, how do they get to the front door? Do they have to get on the roadway?
No, they could just go down the sidewalk and go in
There
the
is a
front
side,
door.
okay.
Yeah. It's the main walk along Bruin Road is all accessible.
Okay. but
And
if
the
somebody wanted to
handicap
park
park is
behind-
provided on Bruin.
The handicap spot is provided on Bruin Road.
Oh,
And so I just need to know more because it's going to come up on the next application too. Stock Farm has had lots of conversations. They actually provided some ADA spaces within the community for the overall development. Some of them have kind of disappeared, and some of them, that one also has 2 spaces on the left and the right that are already there and on the accessible way. So I need to get with the town and Charlotte and find out what source that said it's mandated that has to be on site, because I can't find anything in our ordinances or in the ADA or in the IBC or in ANSI, which is the governing accessible document for South Carolina or for our county. So we are overparked per the town ordinances. Tabby Road wants us to have 1 more space. That's why there's another one back there. So, I mean, we can make it an ADA space, but that's all private parking. Reality is to your question, it is not a dining, 99.9% of their business is pickup, shipment events. You may have seen them at Bluffton football games, things like that. So it is all like you order them for birthday parties and things like that, and you pick up. If somebody walked in off the street, a kid, and wanted to say, hey, can I buy a popsicle? I'm sure they'd probably sell it to them and they can leave with it, but there is no, that it's all pickup, and then most of their stuff is event-driven.
So you're saying it's not necessary to have an ADA parking space on site for a commercial building in this town unless there's one nearby?
What I'm saying is every commercial building has to have an accessible space on an accessible route to the building by code. It doesn't mandate where that accessible space is. Most large commercial developments say they put them near the front door because that's the closest place to the accessible way. But ADA, if you search it up, ADA space, parking spaces, required distance to the front door of a commercial building, it specifically says there is no mandated distance from a parking space to the front door. But you do have to have an accessible space to get on the accessible route. So I can't say, okay, my accessible space is town hall, even though it's far away, because there's no accessible route to get to town hall. But the town developed all of Bruin, all the streetscape with on-street parking, and specifically designated a public way, which is the sidewalk, and public ADA spaces, which tie to the accessible way. And so all we have to do is make sure that we get from the accessible walkway to our front door. So that's why there's that small ramp from the sidewalk up to our one public space, which is the front part of the building.
Where is the closest ADA parking space, designated ADA parking space to this building?
It's on Bruin Road, and it's probably 100 feet along Bruin Road. It's basically this lot, you got the corner lot, and then you got the next lot, it's sitting right in front of that lot.
And it's designated?
Designated ADA space with ADA rumble strips to a sloped up sidewalk, then you can go along. And then the curb is also accessible. So the town's created the accessible way. We just have to tie into it. And only for the public spaces, like the residential unit on the second floor doesn't need to be accessible.
Question. Where's your pickup window and how do you access it?
You walk inside and there's a desk there and you pick up your orders and then you leave.
But to the exterior with the awning?
That's just to cover the front door because we're required to have a porch facing the
What
street
awning
and
did
a
you
front
point
door.
out, Joe?
You talking about the one by the service yard?
Oh, that's this one here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, never mind.
Excuse me, to make sure I covered everything. Tree canopy, we're fine, but we'll get the documentation to prove it. We did that for the other one back from Rogowski, but we didn't get that time for this one. Local permit, any space we gotta work with the town. We'll remove the film off noted on there. The ground floor, we talked about the window. We'll provide the door and windows, everything are to scale, but we'll provide a specific table to document that and signages.
Could you touch base on there were kind of three other items from the HARB. The existing laurel oak in the front corner, the pervious driveway material, and sort of discussion about a brick feature that they're working on with a different lot that they may want you to do something with, or do like a site feature.
That one.
Touch base on, well, at least the live oak in the front corner, it looks like, or I think it's a laurel oak that's existing that they're proposing that you guys should save. And the driveway material not being concrete, that should be a pervious in their view material.
We went about 4 or 5 rounds around with them.
Yeah.
And honestly, their biggest concern was HVAC noise, which again, we're not putting in commercial units. These are 2 residential units, so they're not going to be any noisier than anybody else in the neighborhood. You know, we can look at, I can talk to Whitmer Jones Kiefer about saving the tree if they think it's going to survive. we're showing a plant back, so, typically in these things, they get beat up, and so we plant back a tree that we know is going to survive and be warranted. That's that one up in the upper left there, but,
So,
So I think what we don't want to do is create, if we approve these plans, but they have the concrete drive, and then the Harb is pushing you to do, I think a pervious material is what I had seen.
yeah, and
In
there's
there.
been a lot of, I think if you would, we have employees and clients in there. I think
Yeah.
if you would poll the people that, rather than having granite fines and things running around on their roadways and beating it up, they would prefer to have the concrete.
Okay.
So that's,
So if you want us to keep moving forward with the plans as is on those respects,
that would be our preference and their preference, because we think it gives a better surface. You don't have, we meet the pervious, impervious calculations. We would prefer not to have all of the granite fines and gravel running into your neighborhood. Again, very little public really is going to come to this thing, but they do have people come and pick stuff up. I'm willing to bet that 99% of the people pull in the space right there on Bruin Road, walk in the front door, pick up their stuff and leave. They're not going to pull into Tappy Roads and find this driveway that feels like a residential driveway, which the owners who run the business are parking in. But, can't control people. We're trying to meet the ordinances, but the reality is that's what's going to happen. And so we would prefer to have the concrete drive, and we prefer to plant the nice live oak tree right there on the corner. And I just have to meet on site and walk around Tabby Roads and discuss the door.
okay.
Any other questions? You don't need a dumpster or anything for this place? No.
Trash cans. This is a very, they make frozen popsicles, and they put them in a big box, and they take them to your kids' birthday parties and football games. So
what kind of machinery do they need for, I don't know if it has anything to do, but I'm just concerned about noise level.
inside, it's freezers to keep them from melting.
But there needs
it's
to be a
walk-in.
machine to make the ice cream, no?
They're basically ices, yeah. It's a pretty, you can see the stuff there. So we have to have a 3-compartment sink and hand sink, stuff like that. This is not a industrial scale. This is a husband and wife, family-owned business. This is not a international shipping all over the world kind of thing.
I'm looking at the freezer and the cooler, and that looks pretty huge. And I'm just thinking about how that's going to get powered and what it's going to sound like.
It's inside insulated 6-inch walls. It would be no different than playing your TV or your radio inside your house.
They have 2 more air conditioners in the service yard
Yeah.
for those.
So,
Is the range hood in there? That's just domestic cooking equipment, so there's no kitchen exhaust fan anywhere.
this is not a restaurant or anything. These projects were, as part of the PUD, were designated as mixed-use commercial residential. I think if they had to rewrite their PUD and the people that live in there, they would just assume it'd all be residential. But all the ones along Bruin are noted as mixed-use, and so commercial is allowed. And so fortunately, this one's one where they want to put their own business under where they live. They're living in the same neighborhood that they're running their business. I don't think they want to make a lot of enemies with their neighbors. They're nice people, so
Can you explain the window treatments where the freezer's going? You said you're gonna put blinds there. How are you gonna,
probably do like a roller shade and just,
before the freezer gets installed?
yeah. Just put a roller shade down and call it a day, and then if they sell the building and someone else can, maybe they need the windows, I don't know. And there's plenty of people put aftermarket films on their windows all over the place. But I know we're going through the process. We've tried to be proactive and put a note on it that it was going to be a translucent film on it. But obviously
When do you need those windows, I guess is the question.
we didn't have the windows there, and the Harb wanted us to put the windows there. So we had, initially we started with like some faux built-out windows, then we got rid of them, and they said it was too empty. So we put the windows back and said we put film on it. You all said, well, we don't want the film, so we'll just do windows and put a roller shade on it.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'll see you in a few minutes.
All right, then we are looking for a vote or for a motion. Unless there's other discussion.
Charlotte, on the ADA requirements, is that something that if we left that off, that could be just handled as a building department issue during the building department review for enforcement?
Well, I did speak with the building official today. He did say it would be required.
Okay.
So there would need to be, one of those parking spaces in the back would need to be ADA?
Correct. So if, my understanding of federal ADA law, if commercial parking is being provided, then that's when the ADA requirement is triggered.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, I don't see on Bruin a space that is specifically for handicap accessibility. And that may be something that we need to look at as commercial businesses are built along Bruin Road. But I don't see it looking at the Google view, which was taken in November last month.
You don't have a picture of that spot, do you?
It's right in front of my office, to my office, so I know 100% that it's there.
Okay, so it's farther west.
It's like 2 blocks away.
It's me, the corner lot, Tabby Roads, one lot, it's sitting like right there. I mean, I looked at it because you're gonna see us in a while for our property, and I had to find the ADA spot. So I 100% on my life say that there's an ADA space on Bruin Road, across, right down the way.
And you said that's near your office? So does that mean that space is going to be shared with this business and your business?
I have ADA spaces in my office. It was the old redfish, so I got lots of them. But you don't really get to designate them because the ADAs, just like all the ADAs, I probably should stand up here. Just because all the ADA spaces along the streetscape are all public ADA spaces. So no one gets to claim it per se. It's just like the one in front of corner first.
Right.
They're just for public use, and so they're basically have built in your public way. I'm happy to sit with Mr. Terrell and because I will also say that the ADA says you have to provide an accessible way to the building, and it doesn't say you have to have an ADA space on.
You do have to ensure, somebody has to ensure that there's at least 5% ADA parking spaces for what's provided.
Yeah, I mean, there are requirements, but again, we don't have an ordinance that says it has to be a certain distance from the door. It just says it has to be the accessible way. And so our public part of this building is our front little pickup spot. So we are providing an accessible public way. And I'm happy to, it's not necessarily, I mean, it is, I guess, from the building side, doesn't affect the building, it does affect the site.
Is there a reason you wouldn't just provide the 8-foot or 5-foot access aisle?
I will have
Next
to
to that
sit with
parking
the
spot.
HARB
Yeah.
because the HARB wanted the extra space. And if the town is saying you need an ADA space, we'll lose that space to stripe an ADA. So if we lose the space, the Tabby Road says, well, you're not in compliance. If we add, so there's this kind of, like we meet the town ordinances for the parking and having the ADA, but the Tabby Road says we don't meet their guidance because they have different parking rules. So that's the challenge is we have some conflicting things here between the Tabby Road's requirements and the town requirements. So I'm happy. I honestly, like, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, I can stripe the space and we can slope the sidewalk up to the porch. It doesn't do you any good if the Tabby Roads makes us get rid of the side door because you can't get on the side porch over to the front. You're basically walking down the sidewalk, across the public sidewalk, back onto the accessible way that we are using to come in the front door.
Well, it
Like,
doesn't
it
matter
just-
if it does us any good. Does it do somebody who's handicapped any good?
They can't, if the, it's hard to see, can I get to the
Your
floor
elevation.
plan again? Someone in a wheelchair has accessible access, and I'm very sensitive to that, has accessible access to this facility.
I just see if you don't have a parking space back there for somebody, I don't see where,
So here's what you're gonna do. If you
Parking.
park ADA here, you're gonna come out here, you're gonna come here, you're gonna come along this sidewalk, you're gonna come all the way down here, you're gonna come on here, and then you're gonna come in this door, because this is the accessible route. That's the public space.
and there's no route like through that porch.
Well, they want us to get rid of this door. So in theory, you could come up here and come up here, but if we get rid of that door, then there isn't a way. You can come up, so otherwise, I'm gonna park right here in my ADA space, and I'm gonna go, shoo. You're actually traveling less distance from the existing ADA space on Bruin Road than if I would put you in the back of the building and go all the way to the front. It just, I'm happy to stripe it, and I can go back to the Harb and say, hey, they made us stripe the ADA space, and that's what it is. But you're basically taking out 2 spaces for other things, and there's already an ADA space there. So I disagree with the building official. I know I don't get final say, but I always like to have those upfront conversations. Again, this isn't trying to not be accessible. Like, I can just tell you there's an accessible route, and we are tied into the accessible route to our public space.
Well, when you were initially designing this whole thing, was that not taken into consideration that one of these spaces needed to be ADA and therefore the design should allow for a way for
Actually,
somebody
we
to
went
get-
out to the site and said there's an ADA space right here that's on the accessible route.
But it's not,
On the
but you don't, yeah, you don't provide parking on the property.
Yeah, I mean, the parking on the property is primarily for the owner of the business and we're required to put the parking on the property because there's a residence. If it was just business, we could use the on-street parking to count. So the owner of the business and the residence doesn't need the handicap parking spot. They're able-bodied people. So the parking in the back that's being required for the 2 spaces for the residents and the space for the carriage house is for the residents. So you're putting a handicap spot basically in the spaces where the town ordinance says you have to provide for the residents on the property. And then we have the
I
public
guess
parking.
you're not seeing my point. It was like when somebody was first designing this building, that they didn't think about that. Like, okay, we
did.
know we need 2 spots for the residents. We should also think about, because it's a commercial building, that it requires an ADA spot. So that was, it just seems that it was never taken into
I
consideration.
did think about it. That's why when we started at my office, happens to be right there, we walked up and down the street to ensure, and when we do look at the next project, I did the same thing. I walked in there and there is an ADA space on the site next door, and there's another one on the other adjacent site, and
But
Stock
not on
Farm.
the property.
Not on the property, as part of the Stock Farm ADA parking infrastructure and sidewalks and accessible access. Because on that one, I walked out and there is no accessible parking on 46. And said, well, we don't have anything here, so now we have to figure out how to get people from these ADA spaces up to our front door. So, I mean, I can tell you that we did honestly think about it and analyze what the particulars of each site were.
Is that, that on-street ADA space, is that on the other side of Spartina, Wild Spartina Street? So
It is.
somebody's crossing the street.
Someone's crossing the street, but both corners are accessible with accessible strips on them.
Is it a
Sure,
four-way?
but I mean, there's, you know, all
It's
kinds of
only
reasons.
3 ways, but it is a stop sign where you would be crossing. Again, I'm happy to meet with the town, and if the town says this is the way it is, we'll stripe a space back there. Obviously, again, the challenge that we have is they say, well, okay, you all want a handicap space there. Okay, we do that. Well, the Harb wants gravel fines. Well, we can't do both of those either. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's just this, and then if we get rid of the door, then
I mean, Tabby Roads can't make you do something that the building department says needs to happen.
I agree.
And you could easily stripe handicap access aisle in addition to these 2 parking spaces. You could,
I would love
is
it.
there
Tabby
no
Roads
reason
would
that
let us,
you could add an aisle?
if Tabby Roads would let us, this would be ideal right here, is let us reconvert one of the, but they don't want to.
Why can't you just add an access aisle, plan north of spot 5?
Right here?
By the orange rectangle,
Well, I'm
like
sorry.
above
parking
above
spot.
the red
Spot
square.
5,
Yeah,
Right
right there.
We could widen that out. I think the town wants us to stay over 5 feet off this property line. So that's why that's here as a Band-Aid off of that particular one. But I mean, we could widen that up, we could move it, we can create a large stripe there.
Okay.
There are options to
Yeah,
take
it's not-
care of it. I don't hold to the principle that you have to have it on property. I had this conversation with Dan, and the ADA, you just, again, I encourage you all to Google it on your free time. It's very specific. You have to provide an accessible space to the accessible way, and there is no prescribed distance for the space. Obviously, you don't want them to march miles, and there's a human side of it, I get it. But to park here versus right here, it's the same distance. And I honestly think people won't even realize that there's a space back there. Because it's going to feel like you're pulling into someone's backyard on their driveway, which is. So, but again, I'm sensitive to accessibility. I deal with it. That's why we took careful time to figure out where the accessible spaces were.
Okay. I did have one other question. The louver detail for the service yard, you've got vines, jasmine growing on it, and it is showing a 1/2-inch gap between the louvers, like a visible gap, not that they're overlapped. It was on the detail sheet. Right there, that 4A5, 5.0, there's a 1/2-inch indicated between the bottom of one louver and the top of the next one. And they're also sloped towards the interior of the service yard.
Oh, so I guess the Harb required us to have that exact detail.
And have it slope into the service yard?
That we could probably change.
Okay.
We can probably change the slope of it, but they required a
A
1/2
visible
inch
gap?
Is that true?
That wasn't, I thought that was maybe a minimum in there. I didn't know what you guys were trying to do.
We can change the slope with the louvers, so that will help.
That-
And
yeah.
unless you're trying to look through it, you probably won't. So we can.
Right, it'd be nice to not have like a 1/2-inch visible gap in there if there's not a reason for it.
I don't see a reason for it, but JCU had to negotiate the Harb guidelines. I mean, we can go back and request that we layer the louvers and slope them to the outside. I have no problem doing
Okay.
that.
They had it as a 1/2-inch max, so
Okay,
I think you could reduce that to like a typical detail, yeah.
got it. Maybe we could have just labeled that as 1/2 inch max, but we'll draw it up as,
And I think
Aligned.
that'll help. Otherwise, I'm kind of concerned about the jasmine not being necessarily enough on that.
no problem. We will switch the slope and make sure that the proposed gap is actually fins aligned. Any other questions?
No questions.
So if someone's going to make a motion, how do we want to treat that first item? Do we want to leave it up to the building department?
I think you could reword one if,
If,
off-street, go ahead.
Sorry. I do think it's up to the building department. I don't think that's up to us.
Right, and so. if
Well, I
we-
think in reviewing the site plan, if we wanted to, if we felt strongly that we could probably require it, but I think if we wanted to leave there leeway for negotiation with staff, that the building department has that authority to make that happen if it needs to. So,
They already have ADA parking on Bruin Road, so I don't think it's necessary for us to vote on it at all.
yes, I mean, my concern is that it's across the street, and.
It's not across the street.
It's not just somebody in a wheelchair that you are concerned with for accessibility guidelines, but people with vision issues and, you know,
But it's not
Mobility
really closer than the back.
yeah,
Well, that's just if you're taking a wheelchair.
So that space is on the block to the west. It's on the next block between Wild Spartina and I believe Pritchard. So it is mid-block here, and there is an on-street space. And looking at
There's another road before you get to Pritchard Street,
is it Shellrake, I believe?
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's between Shellrake and Wild Spartina. It is on street. Looking at the ADA law, which is federal law, if a business provides any commercial off-street parking, then that's when it triggers the requirement for the ADA space. If the commercial parking was eliminated completely from the site, then the on-street space would be fine. And there is no distance requirement then, so that would be correct.
I think that's pretty clear. I mean, I would think we should keep that in our motion. I think that needs to happen. There are solutions to make it happen and keep two spaces if that needs to. It's not really one or the other on the site plan.
So those two spaces would be strictly for the residents, no commercial use whatsoever.
So 3 are required, so 2 are in the garage, and then 1 would be on the surface parking lot, and then there's 1 additional space, which would be for commercial. They are allowed to use adjacent on-street parking. They aren't required to have any unless it's a requirement of tabby roads, but for the purposes of the UDO, there is no requirement to have on-street parking for commercial uses in this instance.
If those two spaces are not, if not one of them is designated for ADA, and I just want to make sure I have this clear, and those are strictly residential parking spaces, right?
Yes.
And they will never be used for commercial space, for commercial parking.
The UDO,
She said if there is commercial parking, then you need to have an ADA space on site.
there are 3 required parking spaces to be on site for the residential component of this project. There's 2 garage and 1. Tabby Roads made us add another one just because they can. And that's where we added it. So that's where the residential people are going to park. The commercial piece of this is accommodated by the 2 off-street parking, and there is no requirement by the UDO to say that we have to accomplish that with on-site parking. So, in my opinion, those spaces are for the residents because they're the 3 required, and Tabby Roads made us add a 4th. The commercial component of this project is 100% taken care of by the 3 on-street parking spaces and the ADA access that's existing on Bruin.
Okay, so I'm 100% clear, those spaces that are marked in red right here will not be used for commercial parking at all.
I mean, yeah, I mean, they're required for the residential use. Now, all kidding aside, if Joe wants to go pick up his popsicles and pulls in there, I can't stop him from doing it. But I will say, as a person, if you were driving down this road and you saw a garage with a driveway in front of it, you would probably not pull in that person's driveway to park to go do commercial use. Because that's how it's supposed to be, look, and that's how most of all of these are set up down there, is kind of alley access driveways.
Will there be any kind of signage saying like this is residential parking only? My only thing is that if that is going to be used, if the intention, like the side intention is that'll be a commercial parking space, then and from what she said.
It's not the side intention at
Okay.
all. That parking space wouldn't even be there unless Tabby Roads asked us to put it in there. That's just the reality of it, because we don't need it for the UDO requirements.
You're not gonna have curbs, essentially is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, it's just, it wouldn't even be there.
Space, yeah.
But they said, you gotta have another parking space. Okay, well, we'll just put it right here. And we don't need it for commercial use, and so, I mean, we can, in our sign ordinance, we can talk to the client if you wanna, I'm sure they'd be happy to put a sign that says residential use only, whether Tabby Roads wants us to put a sign up that says residential parking only, because then, who knows, it just kind of opens up Pandora's box for everyone putting those on their driveways. But you can note in, if you want, that the parking on, and the road property is for the residential use, it's fine with me, because that's what it's there for.
Sorry to beat a dead horse. No?
No, I mean,
So if there's.
I think it is a good point that if you make that a handicap parking space, you're really characterizing that parking out in front of the garage as commercial. So I'm kind of leaning towards being open to letting them negotiate, like leaving it so that they can figure that out with the building department. The building department's independent of us, so my understanding is if they really want that to happen, they can require that separately of this process. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I
I
get
think,
that,
again, the trigger is that three spaces are specifically for residential. That fourth space is treating that parking now as commercial. And the ADA law is what's triggering the requirement for the ADA accessibility space.
So you're saying because it's over
Because the HARB is requiring this fourth space, that's the trigger for requiring the accessible space. And if that requirement went away, then the whole issue would go away.
So look, if somebody was doing a larger mixed-use site and they had, because people have proposed them, like carriage houses that are attached with residential use, the staff typically looks at that, there are two off-street parking spaces. You can't go start counting more things as residential parking to get away from certain calculations and stuff in your view. Now, any spots beyond what's required for the residential in a mixed use is typically considered a commercial spot.
Correct. So, yeah, if a business provided between 1 to 25 off-street spaces, one alone is going to trigger the requirement for the accessible space.
Okay.
And that's, again, that's not a UDO requirement to have that space off-street. That's an HARB requirement.
We can also talk to the HARB. I mean, it's just, in their calculations, they said you have to have another space. There's nothing where it says that
They don't have a
a
requirement
commercial
for it.
space or a residential space, like we can talk to the HARB and say, just so you know that we met with the town, and this is all designated, for the residential use only.
Is it a written requirement that they're
They have
coming up with a sixth spot, or is
Yeah,
it just
some
they
strange
looked at it and decided?
calculation Based upon use and carriage house, and they don't let you count. They only let you count like 1.6 of the two off-street parking spots, and I mean, somebody had fun with math. So it comes out that we actually are only required to have like 0.34 of another space, but you don't round down, you round up. And so that's where the extra space came in, is because we needed 1/3 of a parking space. But it doesn't say that it has to be commercial use. In fact, if they, again, like I said, their biggest challenge with the project is that there's a commercial use, but it's allowed in their PUD. So they would be, owners and everything would be fine, and probably the HARB saying this is residential use only for the driveway. I don't see any issues with that. Again, I don't know how you you're regulated, then that's a whole different problem of people park in handicap spots when they're not supposed to. So I can't control human behavior, but I will say, as an architect, visually, it will feel like you're a person's driveway.
I think I'm okay leaving it up to the building department because
Yeah.
I think this is out of our realm of what we're looking at the structure. Does it meet the requirements? Does it meet, the UDO? Does it meet all that? And as far as the parking, I think that's beyond our realm. So I'm okay with leaving it up to the building to start.
I agree.
Agreed.
I mean, I'm open to that, but I would say that the parking is within our realm. I think that there's been, I think enough arguments made to let them, we don't have Chapter 11 or the ADA guidelines sitting here with us and to let them negotiate that with the building department. My other thought on a motion would be that we should give them leeway. I thought the door EO2 either being a door or a window was fine either way, so I think in our motion we could capture that. That could be a door or a window, since they would sounded like they wanted the flexibility to try to keep that as a door.
Further discussion? Would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I would motion to approve the projects with the conditions as provided by staff, conditions 1 through 8, and then modifying
Number 1.
no, we don't have to, Charlotte's written number 6 in a way that gives that flexibility. So I just motion to approve the application with the conditions as provided by staff, numbers 1 through 8. She has provided the flexibility for both the ADA and the ground floor door in the way that she's written that. So I think we're good there.
The louvers,
And also noting that the louver should slope outward to screen the equipment.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is passed.
ready for the next item?
Yes. Next.
Okay. The next item is a request from the applicant, Jacob Woods of Court Atkins Architects, for the property owner, 5812 Guilford Place LLC. They are seeking a certificate of appropriateness approval to allow construction of a new 2-story commercial building of approximately 2,420 square feet and a 2-story carriage house of approximately 1,050 feet. The property is located within the Stock Farm development, fronts May River Road, with the rear portion along Guilford Place. The zoning is Neighborhood General HD. This is a photo from Google, again, recently taken in November. You can see the property there that is wooded. The adjacent property is under construction right now. Photos from Guilford Place looking into the property. A couple of perspectives here. As you can see, there is 2 tabby parapet walls there that are proposed, that are the main feature of this development. There will be commercial ground floor and upper story, as well as in the carriage house. And there will be a connector, an open air connector between the 2 buildings. The property slopes slightly, so you can see as well that we've got a ramp adjacent to the carriage house. and stairs going up to a courtyard. This is the rear looking into Guilford Place, and this would be the front. Here is the site plan that you see here, again, May River Road. The sidewalk is proposed to extend into the May River Road right-of-way, so that will require an encroachment permit from South Carolina DOT. And then in the rear, there is some additional parking that is proposed. And again, this is also a similar situation when commercial parking is provided by a business, then the ADA compliance is triggered, so an ADA space would be required. We don't have a letter of approval yet from the POA of Stock Farm. I think there's a matter that needs to be resolved. My understanding is that they are fine with the development, but I unfortunately don't have that letter to provide to you. I want to point out some other things here too that I've identified. The setback is 20 feet, 19 feet, 10 inches is proposed, so this could be moved slightly. The building slightly back, and then the front porch, I'll talk about that in just a moment as well. Let me go to here's the roof plan. We need to see that in the future. So here is the front elevation from May River Road. And the front porch is a requirement of the UDO. The front porch is actually hidden behind the parapet. So staff believes there might need to be a determination whether or not this actually fits that purpose. With the requirement, there has to be either an awning, some sort of canopy, an arcade, or a colonnade. In this case, a porch is provided, but again, it's behind that parapet wall. This is a trellis feature here. I don't have information on that material, but as you know, with a screen porch, the screening would have to be behind the post. I'm not saying that well, but I think we might need a little more information. I just wanted to bring that up. I didn't bring it up in my report. And also these windows that are shown here, because this is not a retail storefront, these fixed frame windows are not permitted, so that would need a determination as well. So here's the interior view to the west, looking into that property that's under construction right now. As you can see, the fixed frame windows are also on this side. Again, a determination would be necessary. Let me go back here. And then you can see the connector into the carriage house. This is the Guilford view from the south. And another view of the main building, the rear of the main building. This is the interior view to the east. Again, there's a garden area located here. The stairwell into the second floor is located behind that trellis screen. Courtyard here, I've identified that the railings here will need to be identified, the material. Materials elsewhere for railings are proposed to be aluminum, and the HPC will need to make a determination if that is appropriate. Here are the various sections, the first floor plan. Here's the front porch that I mentioned behind the parapet wall, and then there's a garden located here. This is the May River Road elevation. Here's the second floor plan. The landscape plan, again, will need to have a tree removal permit and certainty that we have 75% tree canopy coverage. Some additional details. More details. So these are the three determinations that will be needed. Whether or not the front porch location behind the parapet wall meets the intent of the UDO, a determination that aluminum is an appropriate alternative material for the various railings, and then we need to identify the stairway and the ramp railings, materials for those, and a determination that the fixed frame windows are appropriate. Additional findings, got several of those. We want to be certain that the service yard is large enough to contain all service-related items and that the utility meters are screened. There were some column details that were missing, so we want to make certain that they meet the requirements of the UDO. Identify the railing material, provide door and window schedules. We'll need the survey, the tree survey of the existing property to be certain, too, that 75% tree canopy coverage will be provided and that a street tree will be provided. Tree removal permit will be necessary per the applications manual. We'll want to have the letter of approval from Stock Farm POA. And because the proposed parking area is encroaching into the common area of Stock Farm, we're going to need to have that approval as well. Compliance with the ADA federal law will be necessary. The front yard building setback will need to be met 20 feet, and future signage will require a site feature permit. And if you choose, you can approve the application as submitted with conditions or deny. And staff, with the criteria that we've shown, believes that it meets the 4 criteria, provided the conditions are met. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions for staff?
So all floors are all going to be commercial?
Correct.
Do we know what the purpose is for having that porch behind a wall?
That would be a question for the applicant.
Privacy thing.
It's part of the stairwell, if you look at the
Oh, it is?
last one. The last one she was just on, you can see the
Right.
stairwell going up.
Yeah, there is a stairwell here, and this will be hidden by the trellis screen.
So entryway.
Okay.
So there we
What
go.
about the side parapet?
That's what it says.
So there will be a door here, an entry door.
And this is the side that faces May River.
Correct. It might help if I go here. There we go. So there are some, you can see the stairwell here, and there are wooden slats that will have, I'm assuming that eventually there will be some type of climbing vine given the trellis screening.
Other questions for staff? The applicant like to present?
Hello again, for the record, James Atkins with Court Atkins Group. Well, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and keep talking about ADA spaces. So, the 2 parking spaces that are being added aren't required, but Stock Farm realizes that they have some parking challenges and has asked us to add 2 more parking spaces. So like the last site, we went out and evaluated what we have to work with. We have an ADA space to the left, we have an ADA space to the right, but we have nothing along 46. And so in order to tie the public way and accessible route in, we took the accessible route, we added the ramp so that they could get up to the level of the first building and work their way to the front door. This is a multi-tenant building. There's one tenant upstairs and one tenant downstairs, and then a tenant likely in the carriage house. We don't really want to have the expense of the additional parking spaces, but the owner, in talking to Tabby Road, not Tabby Roads, geez, we've moved on to Stock Farm, have asked us to, and I know a few other folks have added spaces. So it's kind of half in Stock Farm's property and half in his property. And like I said, there are 2 accessible spaces, and we've created an accessible way to the primary tenant on the first floor. The other primary items, let's talk about the porch. It's a porch by definition. It's a covered entryway leading to the entrance of the building. It's not atypical in Southern architecture to have the stair integrated with the porch. And we've applied a kind of a tabby wall parapet as an element to define the entryway, and then did add a 5-foot balcony, which is another feature kind of inside the UDO, just as an additional accent. You're right that there will be some growies on the slat walls. I think the primary thing in HPRC, at one time, the carriage house and the main building had the same bearing heights and the roofs were all lined up. And so working through that, we managed to drop that building down and the connector a couple feet to try to create some difference between the two buildings. So we accomplished that. All the columns are wood. We did provide a typical detail for the railing, showing that it is not your typical just, half-inch pickets for the railing. And that would be the intent for all of the projects there, to give depth and dimension to the railing in like other projects, but ask that it be a powder-coated aluminum for longevity of the project. Yeah, right there. This one, we have the louvers right, Joe, so maybe it was just a mirroring
So
thing.
the aluminum railings, that would be, we're asking for an exception to the UDO to have the.
Instead of
aluminum.
wrought iron, yes. And as in the past, and then we've had these conversations that it just can't be like the cheapest aluminum railing that you can find. It needs to have some larger components to it. The windows, sorry.
Do you want me to do this?
I might break it. That's the only thing that worries me a little bit. Which one do I hit? This one?
Go back.
Here we go. So the largest window in that is 3 by 9. So it's 27 square feet. I believe there's a notation that has to be under 36. And then they've got full mullions in between them, but we did assemble them in side by side to create a glass corner, which is where their conference room is. And we did that in the top and the bottom to create a perspectives again. There we go. Create a nicely kind of detailed open tail rafter glass element, sunroom, Carolina room, so to speak, on the corner there. Utilities are noted on the plan, sorry. Drawing. It's probably one of the largest service yards we've done, so I think we should be right there. But we've got the meters. Is this a pointer here? I'm gonna blow it up.
I honestly don't know.
Okay, well, I won't push it. We've got the 3 units there, one for each tenant. Trash cans. Joe, HPRC was concerned about integration of the stair and just having ability to kind of jump back there. So we've actually louvered all that off, widened the stair, pulled it out a little bit, and then brought the louvers all in. So the service yard meters and trash cans are under the stair, and then we have the HVAC units in the service yard integrated in the back. All the doors and windows, I'm just going to go through the staff report, are plywood windows. We're covered there. We did get an updated landscape plan on this one. The 75%, we're at 78.4%, so we'll get that resubmitted. And we got confirmation this afternoon that the Stock Farm ARB letter was sent with approval earlier today. So it just took some time, but don't try to get a hold of him because he just left for Mexico today, but it should be in your email box for those things. And as far as I know, it didn't have any comments. Tree canopy, fixed frame windows, railings, service yard, ADA parking. I think that's it. It's a builder's office upstairs, tenants to be determined downstairs, but all commercial on this one. Sprinklers or anything. Happy to answer any more questions if you have them. Any questions for you?
My big concern, and you said it yourself, that the parapet wall doesn't fit the southern architecture. So that I struggle with that not looking like Old South with a big parapet wall. I understand you're trying to block the stairs, but it's a struggle for me to see. It doesn't look like southern architecture to me.
Well, maybe it didn't come out. Parapet walls are a very traditional southern architecture design element. You would find in Charleston architecture, many of the live work side yards have a complete wall on the front with a door, that would technically, by definition, be a parapet wall hiding a porch to the front door. So it's an interpretation of that, sure. It's kind of, I guess, architectural license to create creative things, but it's using all of Southern vernacular elements. It is a porch by definition.
It just looks very contemporary to me.
There's a similar building in the same street. I think that's where Ingle Volkers is based out of. They have a parapet wall going into a porch.
Facing May River?
It's not facing May River though, no. But it's similar architecture.
And it's similar in its sister next door. We've actually, the one under construction has a tabby parapet wall. And so he really likes that building. He's not a big fan of the building to the other side, so he wanted to create some complements to that architecture that's under construction right now to the right.
Could you walk us through the slat wall screen idea? Because it really does kind of close off that porch on the left side.
This was an opportunity to bring some green onto the building and provide, everyone loves Confederate jasmine and running up the trellis and everything. Oftentimes more beautiful than seeing a bunch of parts and pieces of a wood stair. And so this was a way to, again, hog fencing is a very traditional Southern element. So we've extended it up here to provide a screen wall to the stair element and bring some green to the building and a little bit more, soften the building, make it feel a little bit more natural.
How does it work once it gets to that sign though? You have a break point there. How does it grow past that sign and grow in the upper portion? If that's the idea.
I mean, I would hope that they would trim it in a way that would kind of go up the sides and eventually all the land stuff's pretty hardy.
It is, but I mean, that sign is almost all the way out.
I mean, it might be fun to, as a in-between, maybe it's just on the ground floor and we open up the top floor so you get a little bit more of that porch nature to the back.
Yeah, that'd be my major concern with that is that you just see metal up there, that it's not gonna grow all the way to the top there because you have that sign as a breakage.
And it's on the north facade, which, it's in the shade all day long. It's shade tolerant, but it's not going to grow it's certainly not going to grow 2 stories very quickly in the shade.
I grow about the same as the live oak trees. But I actually kind of like that idea, talking through it, you kind of see the forest through the trees here. I mean, again, listening to having maybe a little bit more openness to the porch. Maybe that slat wall goes away and you don't have all the parts and pieces of the stair up there. You have the landing. We just have the railing coming through.
Yeah, I mean, I think the front's a little busy with that. I mean, the trellis, is there any thoughts taking maybe that trellis off? There's almost too many parts on that front.
Actually, we didn't have the trellis for a while and then just kind of, we actually had a roof at one time too. I'd be fine having just a header over there. I mean, it was a nice element to create a little bit, if you kind of look at the diagrams on balconies and things in the UDO, they have roofs and things. We didn't really want to put a roof on it. But I would, if you feel like there's too much going on, I have no issues maybe losing the slat wall on the second floor and losing the trellis just to kind of simplify it and not make more than it needs to be. I have no issues with that.
So if you took the slat wall off, that would just be railing? That's a porch that goes over
Just a
there?
railing across there. That's right. You can see,
You put the porch across the entire front?
it would be, you would just see the peekaboo. Let's see if I got a second floor in here. There we go. So, I don't have a pointer, but on that upper opening there, that slat wall goes all the way up. So now we would just have the picket railing. So you would get a sense of the railing coming all the way across.
But you wouldn't extend the porch across the second.
But the porch up here actually does extend. It turns into the railing or the landing for the stair.
I don't think they could because there's a sign there.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Yeah, some adjustment of the height of the sign there, but I mean, I think the intent of the UDO is that, you're activating the streetscape with the porches and having that be completely screened, I think is a mistake, especially at the top landing where you have the opportunity for somebody to be coming up to the top of the stairs and be seen there. I'm not sure that I'm as concerned about screening the underside of the stair. But I do like the balcony and the trellis and kind of like the kind of creating a little romantic moment on that facade that I think
We've joked.
I don't mind
a
the
lot of
balcony,
pieces,
I
but
just,
it kind of activates that facade. It helps.
I don't mind the balcony, I just think there's a lot of details on that front. When you have a metal, then you're gonna have another railing, and then you're gonna have a balcony with the railing with another trellis above it. I think there's just almost too much going on in that front, it could be simplified.
I guess I'm less concerned about it because that entire streetscapes, as you go down that street, there are some buildings that are sort of super simple. So having something that's
there's
a little
still a
bit
lot going on.
more ornate, if they're, willing to do it, is not something we
I mean,
should
I still think
discourage.
there's a lot going on with that, and it's a pretty detailed. I just, like I said, I just worry that the trellis is a little too much. I mean, that railing's gonna be a statement.
Have we in the past approved the aluminum railing?
We have.
Yeah, if you look at like the Kelly Karen interior design building that was before my time on the HBC, but it is a similar horizontal slat aluminum element.
And I think the one being built right now has aluminum handrails as well.
A lot of them.
Most of
We
them.
approved last week one in Stock Farm. They were requesting the same handrail as across the street. It was a similar flat bar aluminum handrail.
Not the diagonal, it was just
It was not the diagonal, but I mean, the UDO doesn't provide a lot of guidance on the design elements of the handrail so much as the physical materials of it.
I definitely welcome novel designs. I think it's nice. Does anybody else have thoughts on the trellis on the front elevation? It doesn't bother me personally.
I think if you open that up, then that doesn't bother me either.
I just have one question on that top right perspective. It looks like the roof behind the parapet might be interfering with that top left window of the corner piece.
It's kind of that way, doesn't it? We'll make sure that doesn't do that.
Okay.
I think we raised that bearing up slightly, and so that probably didn't get coordinated. But we'll probably pull that, I don't want really that overhang to slip past that parapet wall
Yeah.
anyway, so we'll pull that back.
What is the intention behind the cap on the parapet?
Cap.
Is the top of the parapet wall, is that just stuccoed over?
Yeah.
Or is there,
Where, like right here?
no, there, but like the
Here?
top, yeah, there.
We've done both. We've done like a metal cap, flashing cap on there. We've also just left it fairly simple and just done a stucco, which is what we're showing here. I mean, there's a slight slope to it.
What is that little slit for?
The vent?
It's a decorative element.
What is the idea? I mean, it doesn't look very recessed and it's unclear what the material is on the inside.
It's just tabby. It's just basically a,
Push back
yeah,
and.
just an element to provide some shade and shadow on the facade like you would a louver and a gable end.
Mhm.
Can you go to the front elevation on that?
Doing pretty good so far. I haven't blown it up.
So what's the thought, I mean, typical architecture, when you have these massing walls on gable ends, they're on both sides. Why is it not on the right side? And it's only on the left? You see that in reality, you'll see both of those.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool about it is the building to the right has it on the right side. And they're going to be kind of similar in design nature. So when you're looking at the composition of the streetscape, it only has it on the right side. This one only has it on the left side. And then this one we've introduced it, on the front. And just kind of break it down. And then on the one on the right, it also has a similar residential, more traditional Eve fascia solve it. That's also the side where the garden, if you go back to the site plan, we've done a whole raised landscape courtyard here. And so there's a retaining wall, and so that all kind of begins to integrate with that, become part of the entry sequence for the downstairs tenant and anyone who parks in the back.
Okay. I understand the building next door, but in this building itself, it just feels unbalanced because it's just it's something you would typically see in that elevation, you look straight on, you'll see that one is got a parapet wall and one doesn't. You got it kind of decide, but if you look straight on at it,
That offset gable kind of mimics.
it should be, yeah. I mean, if you look at any of that architecture, Rosemary Beach or whatever, that kind of architecture, they're always, whenever there's a parapet wall like that, it's, and on a gable end, that you can see, it's always on both sides.
I think that this is just trying to mimic the parapet on the other side.
It's not mimicking the parapet on the other side.
He's talking about the,
I'm saying, yeah, that doesn't have a parapet. This
Yeah,
does not,
no.
the other side has a parapet, but
Right, I'm
it
saying
should,
that-
right.
Is being the gable like that is kind of mimicking this, which is on the other side.
What I'm saying is, if you go to the front elevation, if you read a
Right, you see-
roof that goes straight across, on
Right.
each end, it would finish with that parapet wall. This would be on the
Mm-hmm. Right.
other side, because
Right.
it does read through.
Front elevation, you do
Front
see the
elevation,
one
you see
and,
it.
yeah.
I mean, I'm okay not having it in the back on here, because there's other things that go on there. But when you look on it straight through, that reads through.
But that's how the building almost, it seems like the backside of the building. It's, the courtyard's on the other side.
yes, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the service yard side and the other building's 10 feet away. So the reality is, I guess if you're standing in the, trying to think what's across the street, it's past Dollar, I think it's the car places are pretty close to it. You kind of look on, but traveling, it's fairly well screened. This will fill in, there's existing building to the left and one under construction to the right. So I don't think we intentionally pushed it all the way to that side so that this kind of feels like the back side, and open up the left for some architecture. But, I haven't heard anything that is insurmountable. Like if you feel strongly as the commission that it needs to go one way or the other, the design stint, with trellis, without trellis, parapet wall or gable end, slat wall, no slat wall, any of those things are possible.
Any other thoughts on that?
I don't like the trellis.
You like the trellis?
No. But I'm one of many, so it doesn't matter what I think, really.
Well, it matters. It's a part of the vote.
I mean, we don't know what it is yet, right?
I don't think anything's gonna grow up there. I think it's just gonna be like these wood slats that are gonna get mold on them.
Well, I agree with the upper part, it's definitely not going to, but the lower part, I think it could, and growing is not gonna take that long to do that, in that lower part. But the upper part, you're just gonna have metal, is what you're gonna see.
I think opening up that would look nice on the second floor.
I agree. I like that move. I don't mind the trellis over the balcony, like we were talking about earlier. Does anybody have any strong thoughts on the parapet wall or the lack of parapet wall on the right side?
It does not bother me.
I think Tim has a good point about the consistency. I think the reality is that you like looking at this perspective, you're not really going to see them in connection.
If you're looking at that perspective, you're looking from the street or across the street, you can.
Sure.
This is this one perspective.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're, the two that are there are related to the porches. That's one way to look at it.
Like I said, I just feel like it doesn't feel balanced. You look at the front
Can we
elevation.
see a picture of the actual lot where it's being built on, if that was like an actual picture photo, to show them how close
There is
he
one.
is?
Yeah.
And it's,
So-
that building right there
Yep.
is gonna be I don't know, you'd build a parapet wall for,
It has it on that right side. You can see that's being built there. But
Right.
I don't know if you're gonna see that with that building in front of it.
Well,
Yeah.
I think he's saying if you put it here, you're not going to see it because it's looking directly at that other building.
Yeah.
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 I mean, you
So
see that.
it's the
Yeah,
back
Yeah,
of the
but,
building.
I mean, when you're sitting on the street looking straight on at it,
Go to the street view.
That-
Yeah,
You
right
do
there.
notice it because it's
That's-
there and not
Yeah,
there.
you see that high, I mean, you see the roof, no matter what. I mean, you're gonna see that up there.
yeah, all you're gonna see is like the top piece of the gable because this whole hipped roof storefront element is in the foreground,
I mean, you're gonna see the thickness of the massing wall, and you're gonna see it above the roof. I mean, you wouldn't see it on the other side either, if you make
Yeah.
that argument.
Yeah, I am sympathetic to the fact that they're committing to building this out of like 16-inch CMU. Which is gonna be pretty nice for those two faces. And just trying to think it through before requiring them to build it on a third.
I mean, is that there wasn't a detail of that?
UDO requires that if you have tabby stucco, it has to be on masonry construction. So if you go back to the photo, in fact, I got a call from my client who lives behind this and said, wow, what is that? There's almost done. There's the block wall. Now, you know, it looks big when there's no frame. If you go by now, you can barely see it, but that's the tabby stucco wall there. It's a similar design and detail. And that tree line is about where the property line is. And so that one is right up, that's about 5 feet. So there's about 10 feet and change between the two buildings, but
Any other thoughts?
I got comments beyond that. Are we beyond that?
Sure, it sounds like, yeah.
This is a good elevation. On the porch elevation there, why is that overhang so much? Is there a bracket there? So if you look at the porch right in the middle of it,
we have actually pulled that back in the model when it got submitted and we did our QA. So it's the fascia and soffit is going to align with the fascia and soffit that's beyond.
Is that true for the shed roof on the side of the carriage house as well? Those two 412 roofs look like you were kind of taking the detailing from the
We're
chip
not,
roof, but they're kind of different.
they're not
Okay.
4 foot overhang. So
what is it?
it'll be, I think it comes out to 32 inches or something like that. I mean, it's still extended, but it's not, I think those are shown at like 5 feet.
That's going to be the same height as the other fascia.
Yes, so that fascia and soffit will align.
I think that they were dimensioned 3 feet in the roof plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not 3 feet.
So this isn't showing that 3 feet. This is showing something more. Okay.
Those will get, that got pulled back.
Oh yeah, it's dimensioned 4 feet, 3'11".
May I ask a question? The trellis screen that you see there, should that remain
All the way
on the
up?
second floor?
Left side elevation.
Probably brought down if it's down the front.
Yeah, I still feel like that. Yeah, this whole side of the porch should really be more open. I mean, what's the concern is just seeing the stair.
Yeah, again, it's provided, I mean, it's not wholly solid, so, you know, you're going to get a hint of the stair. But, you know, wood stairs, you know, you've got parts and the pieces. I'd be fine removing it on the upper end, so you could, again, maybe what we'll do is we'll even extend the railing up high to sit on top of the beam so that it feels like the porch wraps around the whole side there. I think could be a nice look. And then kind of it is open on the right-hand bay, so when you come out, there's a little courtyard garden to the left of the front entry there. But up top, we could easily remove it and just put the handrail going across the whole thing.
I think that'd be better.
Yeah, I
Feels
think we're
like a
doing on the
porch.
front, we might as well do it on the side.
Yeah.
Again, free design critique.
And you don't think it would feel better on the lower piece just to have that be open, you know, and have like the area under the stairs open instead of creating a space between the stairs?
I think we feel the messiness of the railings though, going up and then, you know, having a railing high up too, I think it's gonna
Yeah.
I think that simplifies having that base, leaving that.
And then we have to provide a guard or something, because by commercial code, we can't get under the stair anyway, so keep people from crawling there.
Fair enough.
Like all those guards,
Yeah, the
basically.
cane rail.
And you don't want those columns to go all the way up. It wants to have that break. I think just taking off that top probably works.
It'll pretty much look like, almost like the left-hand side on the connector. You know, we'll just have the handrail going across the side there. Okay, good night.
Can you go to the other side? So what are your thoughts on the railing on that? There's not a lot of distance between the railing and the header of that. Is there a reason we can bring that down? Between the header and the railing and the stairs, the rear stairs? It looks like it's only like 2 or 3 feet. Is there a reason that's so high? Could you bring that down to the landing?
The landing's down.
Landing's way down there.
Maybe.
It's a 36 inch, 42, whatever.
Going the wrong
Easy
way.
42,
Yeah.
but there's only, it looks
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 feet. Yeah, if you go to that section, go to that.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, so, I think it's mostly at the top landing, so we could maybe pull that down to the interim landing at the corners, because they're equal there.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll make that feel better. It feels too condensed.
Yeah. We can certainly pull that down to align with the corner landing. That'll probably give you, was it 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? You should probably drop it 30 inches or so.
What is the interior handrail in the, for the rest of the stairs? Is it keeping with that same motif or?
So the
You see it in section, it's shown as kind of like a pipe rail.
yeah, it's a grass rail, like a handrail going up the stairs.
Right.
But we've
The
basically
guardrail.
increased the screening. You can see the kind of slat screening there, so you can't crawl back in there.
Yeah. No, but the guardrail on the side, not just a handrail, but.
Yeah, it looks like a-
Guardrail design.
Oh, yeah, and that's,
Would that match, would it be that the diagonal?
we did it parallel, just so we didn't end up with a lot of odd shapes, but same material. We
Okay.
can look at,
Same construction.
Same
and a
construction, same
Parallel
everything.
approach. And you'd probably pick up that same detail at the top landing then.
yeah, so we would take, it was a good,
Yeah.
keep wanting to hit that button, but it scares me. I think it's gonna turn it off. So rather than lining up with the second floor, we can pull that down and line it with that, corner landing. And that'll give you the kind of,
So the bottom would be on that landing. Would it be at that lower landing or would it be at the next
not
landing
that
up?
landing that's cut through the one beyond it.
Okay.
Which I think will give you a good proportion.
Right, I think that'd be much better with that header. Like I said, it looks like there's about 2 feet between
Yeah,
there.
we can definitely do that.
Good. I feel like the other side.
It'll also detach the belly band and further situate that the connector and the carriage house are a separate structure.
Now, what is the material on the other side that's holding up that railing? Is that board and batten? Go to that side. Go to the side view.
This one,
No, that's back one more side. There you go. So what is that?
it's a hardy panel, cementitious panel. We might end up having a similar detail on the other side. If we end up with a small gap between that and the landing,
Yeah.
we may end up widening it up to match that. My hunch is that it's going to look like that, but have pretty much the same, similar proportions to that on the service yard side, which I think would be nice.
Yeah, it's just a different element that's not anywhere else, that material.
Yeah, it was,
Opportunity to use stucco or something that is consistent with this project there.
can't use stucco. We could add like on the little, you can see it here. And at the corner element, we added the vertical, kind of 3-inch exposure, butt board in the panel.
I think that's better because that's another comment is the other side, that's the only place it shows up is just that.
Yes, it's there and it's on the little, kind of bumped, bay. But we could, rather than just a flat panel, the thought was that just make a stark contrast with one of the HPRC comments.
So are you talking about that or you're talking about what's in the bays or on the big bump out on the other side?
The big bump out and then right there.
Can you go to the other side there? So what's that?
In the panels is a butt board 3-inch exposure hardy.
And what's the other? That's what exposure,
That-
that's
that-
but for, it's just a larger exposure?
That's all. On the garage bump,
Yeah.
yes, that's a butt board with larger exposure. So if you wanted us to add that to this, in the panels at the connector, we could.
What do you guys think? I just feel like that
You mean
there's a
in
lot
here?
of different materials and
Yeah, I agree with you. The,
aren't anywhere else.
You mean put
you
it,
know, we don't really review colors, but it's shaded. Are you guys planning to like
That's just
color
the-
block that
No,
piece?
that's just, no.
It's just
This
different.
is all going to be pretty monolithic. That's just the graphics and,
It doesn't bother me being a panel. I mean, it's a hyphen between the two structures.
It's not the.
Yeah, I think the
it's-
panels, you know, putting the vertical in it makes it consistent with the other side. It's the vertical, the bay with the vertical siding on it on the other side.
Yeah, it's not the panel itself bothers me, it's that it doesn't show anywhere else. It's just a new detail and there's.
Well, but I
you know,
think what he's
5
saying is
different
you might get that detail on the other side when they bring the handrail down.
Yeah. James, can you go to the right elevation? That, see the shed roof on the garage?
Yeah.
And it's vertical siding, and it's the only place where like,
That's what your issue is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another material where it's only there and it doesn't show up, you know, it's just a lot of different materials.
I mean, we could, I'm open for discussion, whatever you all, I mean, we can just keep it simple horizontal and not make more of it than it needs to be. Thought was that it was this kind of shed bump unique to the carriage house, but honestly, sometimes simpler is the better. So, I mean, we could keep it like it is. We could go to a horizontal to match just make it all the same.
isn't it vertical in these panels?
Yeah, they're smaller exposure though. It's a different detail. That's a small, I mean, he has it here. Those are small and this is
Right.
a different detail.
But
So this is
those
a
are-
wider exposure.
Aren't those horizontal and these vertical?
These are all horizontal. These panels
Are
are
all
all horizontal. It's just a tighter exposure on it.
You mean vertical?
They're all vertical, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother me either.
In addition, later on, they didn't have horizontal. So they decided to do
But I like it, like I said, my concern is that it only shows up there. So, you know, it's another material. I mean, like I said,
I think it helps if you leverage that panel detailing on the other side.
yeah.
And having that vertical siding gives you an opportunity to do something different around the windows and have those panels, and then those panels are also on the other side of the building. And on the hip roof element where you've got all the windows and that's all paneled too, and all those pieces have metal roofs on them, I think it starts to build some consistency.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you have those, I think that helps. Correct.
So we'll take that panel detail that shows up here on the connector and integrate it to the other side, so it really does create a stronger hyphen between the two,
Mhm.
like it does here. Yep, I think that will work great. We'll make it work great.
Okay, other comments, questions? Any other discussion?
I just got one more comment, just a question. The window, so the windows in those parapets, I mean, those are gonna be recessed, correct? Yes. The floor, the second floor plan shows that it's outward, but it will be set back in that
It
wall.
will be set back in the wall for sure with the deep seal. Get some really great, feel like a puncture in the wall.
Okay.
All right, any other
On a thick
questions?
wall.
Thank you.
I think that just trying to clean up what the staff comments we had left. The building setback requirement on the front, that 1910 dimension.
That's a typo on our, we can clean that up, is it 20?
This was our list of three things. We handled the aluminum handrails. We had to make a determination on the parapet wall. And there was the third thing was the storefront windows.
Correct.
Is there a reason that they weren't considered storefront windows from your perspective?
The UDOs is retail storefront, and this is not a retail business.
It's an empty tenant space, so does it,
And that, I mean, honestly, I wasn't comfortable enough to prove that, and I felt that the determination was
It's a
needed.
commercial space, right?
Yes,
But it's not retail,
We don't know what it is yet.
but it could be retail.
It's either going to be a business or retail. Those are the two approved uses.
so you want us to flag it and have discussion, so I think that makes sense. I mean, I think it complies with the storefront size and it's proportionate, the windows are proportionate to the rest of the windows. They're not out of scale with anything, and the Munson patterns break it down nice. And I think it adds to the feature of the building.
Which windows are we talking about
The
specifically?
Corner,
the big ones on the front, on the right side.
Right, the two level ones.
The ones on the bottom are
Okay.
large enough to be a
Right.
storefront window. They're
Bigger than the
oversized.
ones on the
Yep.
bottom and top, yeah.
I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, I think the scale, right, complies is appropriate.
Okay. For the applicant. Thank you. You're looking for a motion with several additional comments. Feeling confident to make that motion.
Give me a second.
Can I just have it, are we comfortable with some of the details missing on here? Like actual sections through the front, we only have two sections. We don't have a section of what that slat's gonna be with the. We don't really have a section of the bay. They are noted as, they are keyed on the plan, but they aren't in the packet.
I'd be okay for staff look at it and make sure it's what we're suggesting.
Just be example, like I said, two wall sections, a pretty complicated building.
What we suggested before is you can add, that it's required to be reviewed by staff and HPRC for that.
Yeah, I mean, they've captured the basic eve conditions. They got,
I know I went through the front. I mean, that screen is one that I'd like to see.
the slat.
Slats, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of shows up in that rendering, but if it was more comfortable, yeah, I mean, we can require
I think
that be reviewed by
Yeah.
commission members.
Just maybe, I mean, they're noted on the plans, they're just not provided. They're keyed on the plans.
That's an easy add.
I think the other one would be that bump out too. Just the detail of what that is, the panels.
Okay.
Which I think is also, if you go to the plan, I think it's actually keyed on there too.
Okay. I would motion to approve the application with the determinations that the HPC has determined that the front porch location behind the parapet wall meets the intent of the UDO, that the aluminum handrail is an appropriate alternative material, and that the fixed frame windows are appropriate for the proposed locations. And with the remaining staff comments, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 included. And with the condition that the missing details be reviewed by staff and the three-member HPRC.
I believe there were a couple of more.
And what about the removing of these?
Yeah, I've got that written down. And that no slat wall trellis be provided at the top landing of the porches and along the length of the side of the stair porch at the second floor. And that the vertical boards in the panels be included on the courtyard face of the stairs.
And drop the railing.
And that the, railing be dropped on the right elevation to the level appropriate for the mid-landing.
On the connector.
And that the overhang on the rear-facing porch be reduced to be consistent with the hipped roof detail.
On the bay too, right?
And on the bay, on the left side, on the right side, bay, yeah.
Got all that?
I'm going to have to listen
Okay.
when I write the letter, but that's
There's a
fine.
second to our piecemeal motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thank you, guys. Good. Let's have discussion for the Historic District monthly update.
All right, it looks to be a fairly slow month. We have 3 signs and a residential re-roof. One revision is required for a sign and for 6 Calhoun Street, and I'm sorry, I don't have information why the revisions are required.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, and I do want to add, today is Carrie's last day with us.
Yes.
Thank you for your
time
service.
on the commission.
I really enjoyed it. It's been a privilege to sit on HPC.
Thank you. Now you're tasked with finding your replacement. Just kidding. Would you like to make a motion to adjourn then for your last one?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Would like to second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned.